anything that's the most striking right now about Tristan Jarry on and off the ice, it's that he's smiling. Good morning to you. Good Tuesday morning from Tampa, Florida. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots. Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Penguins versus Lightning here tonight at Amalie Arena. I'll be covering it for DK Pittsburgh Sports. I don't know yet who's going to be in goal, but I would imagine, and actually at this point kind of hope, that Mike Sullivan and his staff stick by Jarry. And here's why. And yeah, I get Alex Nedeljkovic played well in his most recent start. Ned's had a run. Ned's had a couple of runs. Jarry needs to have one of those. He's on one now. I'm talking about a more extended one, a longer look, a better chance, not just for other teams to see Jarry in case the trade context would arise again this summer, but for the Penguins, really, for them to see how he'll handle the next dip that he has in performance, and he will have one again. If only because everybody has one. Because as any athlete or even the people who coach or mentor the athletes will attest, it's easy to ride a hot streak. It's not anywhere near as easy to bounce back once things don't go well. But since he's been back up and going back to that spectacular performance that he had in St. Paul, Jarry is now 4-0-1 in those 5 starts, .934 save percentage. And for those of you who haven't been tracking that particular stat in the league this year, the leading save percentage, and of course this is a terribly unfair comparison, but just so that you have the number in mind, is .933, just a notch below from Connor Hellebuck of Winnipeg. So he's been good. He's been really good. He's been great at times. I feel like there have been spans within these starts where it's looked like the best hockey of his life. Now, I've covered his entire NHL career. So yes, of course, I remember when he's had a hot month, even a hot 5 weeks, bordering on 6 weeks. But what I'm seeing from him now is a level where the other team takes a shot, and no matter what it is, whether it's a rebound, whether it's through a screen, whether it's a tip, a double tip, you feel like he's going to be there. Now, if I'm saying this, and the thing that's crossing your mind is some stupid shootout, just turn off the show and come back tomorrow, okay? Shootouts, they aren't anything. They aren't hockey. Now, if, on the other hand, the first thing that crosses your mind is Anton Lundell's tying goal with 5 minutes left, we can definitely have a discussion on that. Jarry felt he should have been able to get over and get set and stop it, even though it was a lateral pass that was one-timed from the right dot. I will say in Jarry's defense, and not a strenuous defense, because it was a stoppable shot, that Lundell hit the thing with the heel of his stick, and it came at Jarry really awkwardly, literally up on edge, like rolling toward him and wobbling as it did. That seemed to throw off Jarry's footing and how he got set. But if we can move on from those and get to the saves and get to the way he's keeping his team in games and get to the shorthanded breakaway stop that he had on Nico Sturm, that the Penguins turned around, went in the other direction, and scored right away. That's goaltending and a half. That's goaltending that's picking your team up, not just intangibly, but it's picking your team up to the extent that they go soaring the other way and score. Now, if you're expecting that this is going to be the point where I say, that's it, I'm stopping here, well, you're kind of right. You're kind of right, because we are talking about a handful of games. But if he can continue this, and he can resurrect a dialogue in which he might be relevant to this franchise's future, and again, I'm stressing here, I'm not just talking about whether or not he can be traded, whether or not you can move the contract. His for real ambition is to stay with the Penguins. That's not pandering talk. He believes this. He wants this. He loves being a Pittsburgh Penguin. So if only from the standpoint of solidifying everybody's stance, obviously Kyle Dubas is more than anybody else's. I want to see Jarry keep doing this. I want to see him do this right to the end. And I'll say it again. I want to see him do it here tonight in Tampa, because one of these strange traits of his that I've noticed, and I think I've shared this with you before, but I've told him about this, and he thinks I'm nuts, the patterns that I find. But I shared it with him anyway, even if he didn't recognize it at all, that it has seemed to me that he has risen above whenever he looks at the far end and sees a goaltender of some significant repute. There is absolutely a pattern like this in place. And by the way, one of those goalies that he's done that against time and time again is Andrei Vasilevsky. When we come back, J1Q. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Today's J1Q comes from Reg, who asks, DK, why does Mike Sullivan always find a way to word speak his way out of every tough situation? Sorry, that comment that he made in Sunrise, that it's tough to simulate the environment to practice shootouts, sounds a little like the other 31 teams might suffer the exact same fate, does it not? Weird excuse. Reg, respectfully, I'm not going to agree with really anything that you said here at all. I don't believe that Sullivan was making excuses. I was there in Sunrise. I was part of the questioning there, and he wasn't being asked for excuses. He wasn't being challenged toward making excuses. The pattern has been very clearly in play for a long time that the Penguins are getting worse year after year on converting shootouts. The pattern that's new, or fairly new, to this is that they've also been lousy this season at stopping any of them. So it's all just been bad. And therefore, they're 1-6 in these things, with the only win, incidentally, having come against, of all teams, the Sharks. I found Sullivan's answer to be both informative and telling in a way. When he's saying openly that Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang had spent the better portion of their NHL careers as 40% conversion guys in taking those shots, he's essentially saying to any and all reporters around him, go do some digging here. So I did, and it wasn't pretty. Sid's 1-for-6 this season. He's 8 for his past 27. Gino is 2 for his past 12. Letang is 3 for his past 22. Now you can say, why doesn't he get Gino and Letang off of the thing? He has. The shooters are now Sid, Ricard Raquel, Brian Rust. Not always in that order, but those are the 3 main guys. So he's made the biggest move he can make, which is to change the personnel, even if that means sitting a couple of very, very, very prominent players. But here's where this gets a little bit layered, and I don't think there's a coach anywhere who would feel comfortable speaking all the way openly to it. So I'm going to try to share with you what I hear from the inside when it comes to this subject. A coach can't walk into a room and say to a living legend who's put up more than 1,000 points, who scored some of the biggest goals in the game's history, and has done so much of that based on creativity and instinct, especially when it comes to scoring, and say, hey, Sid, you should maybe try your backhand. I mean, Sid's a pretty polite dude. Sid's not going to laugh you out of the room, but he'll be cracking up on the inside. And he should be. And you won't see that. I'm trying to picture the only coach I can think of off the top of my head who could get away with that would be Marty St. Louis in Montreal. Hall of Fame forward. Am I missing anybody? I guess you could take tips from Patrick Waugh from the other perspective. You know, one of the great goaltenders of all time. Now, of course, the head coach on Long Island. But this is one of those times where just being the coach or just having coach's authority doesn't do a damn thing. It just doesn't. I ever tell you guys the Tom Barrasso story as it relates to Troy Ward? Does the name Troy Ward ring a bell with anyone? He was an assistant coach, young guy, came right out of college to help out Kevin Constantine. He was, I don't want to denigrate the guy and what he did for a living because he made it behind an NHL bench. Good for him. But he was doing a lot of menial work for Constantine. This was in the crude early days of analytics when teams were really just having to put together their own information off their own video studies. And they were talking about laptops the way I guess we would be talking today about, like, I don't know, holograms or whatever. Penguins were having a practice, and this was at South Point back when they used to be in Washington County. And there's just some loose shooting of pucks and whatever. There's nothing formal happening in this portion of practice. And as all coaches have sticks in their hands and gloves, and they'll do stuff with pucks, collect pucks for drills and everything else, Ward is standing off to the top of the right circle, and he, just like everybody else who was standing around Barrasso, takes a shot. Please tell me you know where I'm going with this, okay? Because the cringe factor on this is epic. It's like Larry David. Barrasso takes the puck, shoots it back in Ward's direction, and said, "Don't you ever shoot a puck on me again. You were never an NHL player." The reason being that Barrasso doesn't want to give up a shot to someone like that and have them thinking even for a second that they did something to beat Mr. NHL goaltender, eventual Hall of Famer, and all that other stuff. That's the kind of personality Barrasso had, and I'm sharing the nice stuff here. So whether you were or weren't an NHL player does actually make it into some of these scenarios. This happens to be one of them. Mike Sullivan is in no position to tell Sid, Gino, Letang, really anybody on the roster, how to go do a shootout. It's not a coach's thing. He, with respect, he had to work for everything. And if there had been shootouts in his day, they sure weren't about to pick him. So just sharing some of the dynamic here. I appreciate the question. Good one there. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. We'll be back with another one of these tomorrow.